1894 to 1994, The 100 Years of Destruction of the Nation Part 4. After 1994, when we take a look on African history, and history of Rwanda particularly, some would say, what a time we lived in. These last 100 years have been a century of tears and blood. You cannot understand what is happening today without understanding what happened yesterday. The tragic events experienced by the peoples of the Great Lakes region since the 1990s until today will find a way out only through a profound analysis of the causes of these crises that are often fueling themselves. Today, and since the end of the civil war in Rwanda, the victory of the RPF and the accompanied flight of the genocidal forces towards Kivu, the threat of destruction has moved towards our neighbor, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rwanda paid the price for its alienation, the genocide of the Tutsi, and narrowly escaped its total annihilation, thanks to a liberation army which imposed a new ideology, based on national unity, and a new system of values adapted to post-genocide Rwandan society. Unfortunately, Kivu then became the epicenter of this ideology, the same one that led to the apocalypse of Bagasora. A similar process is observed there. Exclusions and violence against one or more national components are considered undesirable according to a colonial reading of identity. Organization of self-defense, militias, to hunt down this enemy from within. Discourse of dehumanization and normalization of murder against the Tutsi or affiliated, Banyamulenge, Hema, etc. Today, DRC counts more than 150 armed groups, which some claim openly their obedience to the genocidal ideology. The same causes producing the same effects. I'm afraid we have to go through the same process as in Rwanda. Some dates: July 4, 1994, capture of Kigali by the RPF. Flight of more than 2 million Rwandans to Zaire, civilians, political and military leaders with arms and the entire administrative apparatus of the state. 1996, after several warnings to the international community about the dangers they represented for Rwanda, the new regime decided to dismantle the refugee camps in eastern Zaire. 1997, capture of Kinshasa by the AFDL of Laurent Desire Kabila, supported by the Rwandan army. End of Mobutu's reign. 1998, LD Kabila, who became president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, changes his alliance and approaches the routed genocidal forces. He offers them military and financial assistance. Beginning of the Second Congo War. 1999, Lusaka Peace Agreement, which will never be implemented. 2000, creation of the FDLR under the supervision of LD Kabila. They are responsible for fighting the RCD, an armed group made up of Kivu nationals. 2001, assassination of LD Kabila by his bodyguard. His son, Joseph Kabila, replaces him at the head of the republic. 2002, Sun City peace agreements between the various Congolese rebel groups and the government. Pretoria and Luanda peace accords between Rwanda, Uganda, and DRC. End of the Second Congo War. 2004, mutiny and creation of the CNDP by General Laurent Nkunda. He criticizes the government for not applying the agreements it signs and for collaborating with the FDLR. 2009, Goma peace agreements between CNDP and the government. Arrest of Nkunda. 2012, new mutiny and creation of the movement of March 23, 2009 known as M23, a group from the CNDP which criticizes the Kinshasa government for not respecting and applying the Goma agreements. 2013, deposit of M23 weapons and surrender to the Ugandan authorities. Nairobi Peace Accords. 2022, following the Congolese government's non-application of the agreements signed in Goma in 2009 and Nairobi in 2013, the M23 takes up arms again. 1894 to 1994, The 100 Years of Destruction of the Nation Part 3, 1962 to 1994. When we take a look on African history, and history of Rwanda particularly, some would say, what a time we lived in. These last 100 years have been a century of tears and blood. You cannot understand what is happening today without understanding what happened yesterday. The tragic events experienced by the peoples of the Great Lakes region since the 1990s until today will find a way out only through a profound analysis of the causes of these crises that are often fueling themselves. After the establishment of an ethnic republic and the so-called independence in 1962, the new leaders took over from colonization in the application of the discriminatory anti-Tutsi policy. At the slightest opportunity, they practiced massacres, as if to remind them that never again in the ethnic republic will the Tutsi have a say. The Tutsi continued to take refuge in neighboring countries, and those in the interior were trying somehow to slip through the baton blows of the dictatorship. Little by little, the situation stagnates and becomes the norm. For those outside, a life of exile was promised. For those inside, it was massacres and discriminations. All must accept their fate. Until, in the absence of proper mediation, the desperate consider resolving this issue by arms, if necessary. As promised in the early 1960s, the genocide was organized since 1990 in response to the demands for the return of hundreds of thousands of refugees. It will have taken 65 years for the settlers to implant their ideology in the heads of the elites and then of the people of Rwanda. It will take 30 for the governments of Mbonyumutwa, Kayibanda, Habyarimana and Sindikubwabo to implement it with the support and benevolent supervision of their Belgian, French. Some dates to understand: November 24, 1959, start of deportations to the inhospitable lands of Bugesera on the instructions of Colonel Logist. They will be more than 10,000 in 1961. 1963 to 1964, massacres in Bugesera, Cyangu, Ruhengeri, and Kabungo. 1964, speech by Kayibanda who promises genocide to the Tutsi, if those outside persist in wanting to return. 1966, massacres in Bugesera. 1973, massive exclusion of Tutsis from schools and public administrations. 1973, coup d'état on Kayibanda by Major General Habyarimana who becomes President of the Republic. Establishment of the so-called moral Second Republic. Establishment of the policy of quotas, ethnic and regional. 1974, Kayibanda and 7 other public figures from his regime were sentenced to death by court-martial. 1979, creation of the Rwandese Refugee Welfare Foundation, RRWF, by Rwandans refugees in Uganda. 1980, the RRWF became the Rwandese Alliance for National Unity, RANU. 1982, some members of the Uganda People's Party youth movement destroyed the dwellings of 40,000 to 45,000 Rwandans residing in Uganda and expelled them into Rwanda. Almost 100 people were killed and many women raped. Around 40,000 people fled toward the border to try to return to Rwanda. Between 8,000 and 10,000 of them found themselves trapped on a strip of land between the Rwandan and Ugandan borders. Many died of contagious diseases. 1987, RANU became the Rwandan Patriotic Front. Its main objective was the return of Rwandan refugees to their country. 1988, a World Congress of Rwandan Refugees took place in Washington and adopted clear resolutions concerning their right of return. These resolutions were sent to Juvenal Habyarimana, who did not respond. 1990, start of the Liberation War by the RPF. Beginning of Operation Noroid with the dispatch of French, Belgian, and Zairian troops in support of the Habyarimana regime. Massacres and arrests of Tutsi in retaliation. 1991, capture of Ruhengeri prison by the RPF and release of more than 1,000 political prisoners. Beginning of the Bugogwe massacres, Tutsi from the north. 1992, the draft agreement concerning the rule of law was signed at Arusha. 1993, RTLM, which was officially a free, commercial radio station, began broadcasting. 1994, April 4, during a reception organized to celebrate the Senegalese national holiday, Theoneste Bagosora stated that the only plausible solution for Rwanda would be the extermination of the Tutsi, in the presence of Romeo Dallaire, Luc Marchal and Jacques-Roger Bobo. 1994, April 6, the airplane of the President Habyarimana was shot down shortly before it was due to land in Kigali. Start of the genocide against the Tutsi.